So we'll turn it over to Elva.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak to your Audubon and introduce you to the Klamath Bird Observatory. So my name is Elva Manquera-DeShields. I've been with KBO for 3.5 years now. I was luckily enough during my master's program able to do an internship here before I started working here. And my job title is Science Communications, Outreach, and Conservation Partnerships Manager. It's a long title. I mostly just say I'm the people person. So we have a lot of research biologists on staff, and I'm the one that gets to go do outreach events and take people on bird walks and do wonderful presentations like this for the community. So using the role of birds as indicators, the Klamath Bird Observatory informs and improves sustainable natural resource management through our mission to advance bird and habitat conservation. And we do this in 3 ways. So we have our long-term monitoring that provides information about changes in bird populations, our in-depth theoretical research that advances our understanding of distribution and movements, and applied ecology that address natural resource and management challenges. And so I'll point these out kind of as I'm going through and talking about our different programs today. So we're located in the Klamath Siskiyou bioregion. Our office is based in Ashland. Regionally, we manage Avian Knowledge Northwest. So this is an interactive data center that scientists and researchers across the Pacific Northwest get to upload their data. And so now that we've been transitioning more and using technology, our team is working really hard in getting file cabinets full of old data sheets uploaded to this database. And this allows us to make predictive models focusing on climate change and other natural disasters and seeing how those might in fact impact our bird populations. And then we also have our professional education and international partnerships and capacity building program. So I'll talk about this a little bit more in our when I talk about our bird banding. But through our partnerships, we have partnerships with people from Canada all the way down to Southwest Brazil. And so one of our programs, one of our longest running programs, is our point count program. And through the point count program, we are collecting data and monitoring trends of bird populations to understand the effects of restoration on birds and their habitats. And with this data, it helps us to inform management decisions to restore healthy ecosystems across the region. So last year, they did over 3,000 point count surveys and were able to spot 29,000 individual birds and 200 different bird species. And so this is a part of our long-term monitoring program. And so we do this because monitoring is an essential component for wildlife management and conservation science. Effective monitoring programs can identify species that are at risk due to small or declining populations. They provide an understanding of how management actions affect populations and evaluate population response to landscape alteration and provide basic information on species distribution. And because of technology advances, this program or this style of research has been revolutionized because we've been able to track birds much better over these coming years, allowing us to fill in a lot of knowledge gaps about how our migratory bird species move across the landscape. And given the alarming large-scale declines of bird populations that we've been seeing, I don't know if you have heard about the paper that reports that we've lost 3 billion birds since 1970. Programs like this really help us understand loss and fragmentation and degradation of native habitats. And there's more need for rigorous bird monitoring and tracking. In order to gather data to support these objectives, we have people visit sites throughout Oregon, Northern California, and Washington to gather data. To conduct surveys, technicians typically drive out to a specific site the night before they're supposed to do a survey, because they have to get up at dawn to do the survey. And there's about 6 to 25 counts per route. And then at each point, they're supposed to stand there for 5 minutes and count all the birds they see and hear. And they also do vegetation surveys. And so this long-term monitoring technique we use with a variety of partners. So whether there's a project on local BLM land or a U.S. Forest Service, and we've been partnering with our local national parks for about 15 years doing this sort of surveying. And this allows people like land managers like the National Park Service to understand when there's a large fire that comes through their park, how is that changing, how birds are using their landscape, or if they're needing to do some restoration, right? If we're starting to see a change in bird populations in a specific area, maybe that habitat's starting to degrade for a particular reason, and they can go and check it out. Bird banding. It has been said that bird banding is once both a delicate art and a precise science. So it is a method of bird monitoring to track bird populations and demographic trends over time. In a typical year, we band over 5,000 birds. And so we start bird banding at spring migration. So bird banding allows us to answer a lot of questions about bird populations. And these can inform land management practices to aid in effective bird and habitat conservation. So bird banding data can tell us if birds successfully breed in an area, and is indication of a healthy habitat. Bird banding data can also tell us if birds are surviving migration. So that's why we start at spring migration and go all the way through fall migration. And we do the same spots year after year. And this allows us, because we also get to band the fledged birds, so we get to see what's the return rate to that habitat. And then as well, so we can kind of assess survival from using the wintering grounds and on their migration. And then we can also tell how successful the breeding birds in our area are as well. And this is a really big part of our international capacity building and professional development program. So I have mentioned earlier that we have partnerships all the way from Canada all the way down to the southern tip of Brazil. And so we have been able to train over 300 young professionals from 17 countries since 1999 with this program. And it's really awesome. They get to come up to the Klamath Siskiyou bioregion, stay in the Klamath Wildlife Refuge area, and band birds for about 3 to 6 months, depending on what internship they decide to choose. And then at the end of their internship, they're able to take a certification test. And so the North American Banding Council offers 2 types of certifications. You can be certified as a bander, and then you can progress above that and be certified as a trainer. And so we get individuals certified and send them off to their home countries. And many of our interns have advanced degrees, research positions in their home locations, and several have already created bird observatories themselves. So we have an intern who's created a bird observatory in Mexico, Costa Rica, Trinidad, Tobago, and the Caribbean, and then as well as in Brazil. And it's really great because we get to stay in contact with these growing ornithologists and help them navigate how to start up a bird observatory, and even all the like HR and kind of fun things in the background, budgeting, grant writing, and kind of get to help support them and build them up in that way as well. So these are just some of the tools I wanted to show you that we use in bird banding. So you can see on the right there, Octavio, he's banding, I believe it was a ruby-crowned kinglet. And you can see that he just has that tiny little bench for all of his supplies. And so they're actually above, it's called Oregon Caves. It's a national monument down here. So they have to hike 20 minutes up a trail with all these supplies, and then set up camp each morning that they're doing bird banding there. And so we measure the band, the leg of each bird to decide what band it needs. It's got to make sure that there's enough room to wiggle and not to get caught on anything. And then you can kind of see on the bench there. So we weigh them, and then he's got magnifying goggles on. And so that allows us to see up close. So birds, kind of like us when we're babies, our skull doesn't fully ossify and neither does theirs. And so we can tell how old a bird is if it's less than 1 year old. That allows us, we can see in, through their feathers. And then we can also see a brood patch. So I skipped ahead. On the left there, you kind of see that naked spot. That lets us know that that bird is actively breeding. So one of the cool things about being able to have birds in hand is that we get to look at very unique things like that, and we can be like, oh yeah, this bird is breeding in this this type of habitat, and then we can hopefully check to see if its fledglings were successful or not. And then on the right there is a northern flicker. You can see the beautiful colors in the wings there. We have, so a lot of our banders are what we call like feather professionalists. And so each species of birds have unique molting. So each year birds lose their feathers, and it could be for a variety of reasons, whether they're getting ready for the breeding season or they're getting ready for a migration. And they all do it at weird times. They all have their own different life characteristics around it. And so there's a lot of research around molting. And it can also tell us a lot of interesting things. So you can look at a feather that's recently been grown in, and you can see kind of the growth lines on the feather. So you can actually pluck that feather, and using a research lab, you can tell potentially where it was wintering or where it was at when it was growing that feather, and what kind of food did it have? You know, was it good food and nutritious, or was it living kind of poorly and was having a hard time? And let me go back. Oh, and then of course you get to see beautiful cedar wax wings like that one in the middle up close and personal, and get to see all those beautiful colors. So there's again, so that's on the left there is a data sheet. And so that's all, each line is an individual bird. And so you can see we take quite a bit of data when we have the birds in hand. And our researchers have to do this very quickly because our number one goal is bird safety. And so once they're extracted from the net, they spend less than 5 minutes processing the bird, and they get it to, and then they let it go. And there's usually 2 to 3 people at each banding station for safety. So you have someone who's examining the bird, and then somebody else who's recording. And then especially for our trainees, we have a third person around to help verify and help answer questions. So outside of our monitoring programs, we also do single species research. So we started focusing on Oregon Vesper sparrows in 2018. And this small population is estimated to have only 3,000 individuals left. And it's up to be listed on the endangered species list. Currently, the populations are fairly well documented here in the Pacific Northwest. Well, I should say Oregon and Washington. But our misunderstanding is part of its kind of life history, as well as where does it winter? So we know where it breeds, but we don't quite know where it winters. So it blends in, and we kind of see this a lot, especially with subspecies, is that when it flies south, it meets up with another subspecies of Vesper Sparrow from the Great Basin, and they look very similar. So it's really hard without special techniques to be able to figure out where they're going. And so we do that you can see those little tags up there, those are GPS tags. And we use MODIS tags to track them. And so some of the questions we're trying to answer is, what kind of things were they facing on their wintering grounds, and where are they doing migration stopovers? And we're really trying to pinpoint potential factors like loss and degradation of habitat due to development, fire suppression, exotic species, agriculture, increased use of pesticides near grassland habitat. So this is a grassland bird, and as you may have heard, grassland habitat in the United States is in great decline. And it's also facing the lack of genetic diversity. So it's facing lots of threats on multiple sides. To begin to kind of detangle all these potential causes of population decline, a group of collaborators, so ourselves, the American Bird Conservancy, Eco Studies, and then we have a local nonprofit called the Vesper Meadow Education Program. As you can imagine, they named themselves after the Oregon Vesper Sparrow. So we're teaming up to understand these factors of why their population size is so small, and what conservation actions are needed on the ground. So we've been looking at nest success, productivity, survivorship, recruitment, dispersal, habitat needs, and trying to answer some important questions about their annual full life cycle. And since this program has been going on for a little bit, we do have a couple videos. The first video I'll show you was professionally made, and it gives you kind of a good introductory into the research that we did, talking about MODIS technology and our nest searching techniques. And then I'll have a follow-up video afterwards. Oh, maybe.
Having traveled over 500 miles from their warm wintering grounds of Central California, these Oregon Vesper sparrows waste no time in their pursuit to find a mate. It's a familiar spring scene in southwestern Oregon, birds singing to stake territory while trying to lure in a potential breeding partner. But this individual may not be so lucky, as scientists have noted a 90% decline in their population since 1968, resulting in a petition to list the bird as threatened or endangered under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. And now, with less than 3,000 individuals remaining, researchers and conservationists are working quickly to uncover the reasons before it's too late. Among the grassy fields and savannas west of the Cascade Mountains, you may have easily overlooked this small and well-camouflaged bird. With a mottled gray-brown appearance, the Oregon Vesper Sparrow does well at hiding in this environment, which is important because these birds live much of their lives on the ground. Between scratching at the soil for seeds and insects, and weaving together nests under any cover they can afford, the Oregon Vesper Sparrow and their offspring are often exposed to threats that differ from their tree-dwelling neighbors. Although nests are well camouflaged to the human eye, frequent predation by snakes, rodents, and coyotes does occur. But figuring out whether enough nests are surviving entails spending countless hours in the field.
I feel like I'm kind of narrowing in on an area to the left of that little ponderosa. Oh, there's a bird. There's a vesper. It just flushed from right here. Let's see if he's banded.
By observing the bird's comings and goings, researchers are able to pinpoint areas where nests may be located. From there, it's a game of hide and seek, with the hope of finding a clutch of eggs or a young to study. Beyond predation, it's not uncommon for nests to be damaged by late spring snow or hail at mountain meadows. Yet, early work suggests breeding success at these high elevation sites is on par with what would be expected for a ground nesting sparrow. So, why is the Oregon Vesper Sparrow declining? Scientists from Washington and Oregon have teamed up to begin unraveling the mystery. While the Vesper Sparrows busy themselves with their breeding season, organizations like the Klamath Bird Observatory are collecting field data as part of a multi-year study. A study that will look at possible causes of the Oregon Vesper Sparrow's decline, such as the bird's ability to raise young, survive the rigors of spring and fall migration, and to cope with the changes in their habitat. It's a difficult problem, and one made even more complicated by the fact that Oregon Vesper Sparrows migrate every year. It's in this brief window of time during the breeding season that these researchers are able to observe behavior, monitor nest success, and apply bands and tags that will help them track the birds' movements throughout their migration. And while some of the research techniques are as old as time, there are new and exciting technologies being deployed, like GPS and MODIS tags. While the GPS tags in the study collect and hold data internally, MODIS tags are able to communicate with receiving stations. Much like how cell phone towers communicate with the phones in our pocket, these MODIS stations will listen for signals created by birds wearing these special tags. As soon as a bird passes within reach of the station's antennas, a time and location stamp is recorded, giving researchers a never-before-seen look at the Oregon Vesper Sparrow's behavior. It's this cutting-edge research, coupled with the tried-and-true methods of field observation, that are paving the way to unique insights into this imperiled species. Insights that will not only help us understand the decline of the Oregon Vesper Sparrow, but may even shed light on how we can better protect the environment at large.
So as mentioned in video, there we are. We were able to send out several male Vesper sparrows with GPS backpacks. And so unlike the MODIS technology that was discussed during that video, the GPS backpacks store the data in themselves. So once we send them out to get the data, we have to catch them again. And so that relies on the birds coming back to the same spot that they were breeding at the previous year and that they survive a whole year. And so we were able to, a couple years ago, recapture 3 males with GPS backpacks on and look at the data and figure out where they were stopping on the way to their wintering grounds. And so the next video that I will show you kind of goes through, shows you their travel spots.
The Oregon Vesper Sparrow. The abundance of this unique Pacific Northwest subspecies declined by 90% from 1968 to 2015. The current population size is estimated to only be about 3,000 individuals. Due to these dramatic changes, the subspecies is under review for listing as endangered or threatened under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. In 2021, Klamath Bird Observatory recaptured 3 males wearing GPS backpacks. These data help tell the story of where this vulnerable species travels and what conservation challenges they may be facing throughout the year. Here is their story.
So we're still, oh, my apologies. So we're still recapturing Vesper Sparrows that we've put GPS backpacks on and are still.
The Oregon
Oh, there we are. So we're continuing work using MODIS. So we have several kind of grassland prairies up in what we call the Klamath Siskiyou National Monument, where we're studying the Oregon Vesper Sparrows. So we're using MODIS to be able to tell us what prairies are they using? Are they using the same ones that they were born in? Are they hopping around? And then we've been expanding our surveys in the monument to find more pocket populations. And then we're also still doing resighting. So you can kind of see in that photo, he's got several little bands on his legs. And so each Vesper Sparrow that we've banded has a different, have different colors. So you can see that guy, I think, has double yellow and a white. So our scientists would be able to know who that is without having to recapture them and look at the identification band that we give birds when we do bird banding. Another single species that we've been doing a lot of work on is the subspecies Western Purple Martin. It is of conservation concern, and again, also only has about 3,500 pairs in the wild. Little is known about Western Purple Martins. A lot of time and effort has been studying the Eastern Purple Martin population. And so previous studies using light level geolocators have revealed that Eastern Purple Martins spend large masses of them spend their time in heavy forested parts of Brazil and in the Amazon. And so we were trying to figure out, where do our Western Purple Martins go? And so a small team of researchers from KBO, U.S. Forest Service, and USGS captured adult Western Purple Martins that were breeding along the coast. And you can see there in the bottom right photo, they have to use some special poles that they handmade to be able to take down the bird boxes to be able to reach in and get the Purple Martins out. They're not, a lot of our other species were able to put up nets and attract them to the nets and catch them that way. But unfortunately, these guys are a little bit smarter, and being kind of near water, it's a little bit harder to do that. And you can see in the middle photo at top there, the size of the GPS tag that we used on them. And a lot of the work was done in a boat. So it makes it a little more difficult. And again, just like for the Vesper Sparrows, these GPS units kept the data on them, and so we had to recapture them again when they came back. And so the next, I'm going to show another video, and it's a different video of a Western Purple Martin making their journey down to the southern tip of Brazil from Oregon. And this data allows us to really pinpoint where they're going, where they're making pit stops at, and where they're spending their wintering grounds, so that we can make partnerships with people in those regions so they can help us answer questions about what's happening on the wintering grounds that we can't. All right. There she goes. And this video is a series of postcards that were created about Rox's journey back home. See if it will, oh, let's see. Oh, so I push play. It's always, I love getting this data from our GPS tag birds. It's always so interesting to me about the journey that they take, because surprisingly, each one is unique. So it's kind of their own unique little story. And it's impressive. Such a little bird can travel so far. So something else, so KBO, besides doing bird research, we're also leaders in specific restoration projects, specifically the Klamath Siskiyou Oak Network. So we lead and organize this network of partners. It's a quite diverse group of partners, and we work to conserve oak and habitats on private and public lands in Southern Oregon and Northern California. So oak habitat has been quickly decreasing along in the Pacific Northwest, especially if you look around up and down the I-5. And a lot of the birds that call oak habitat home are now are considered species of concern. So this was a priority habitat for us to work in and protect. And so the Klamath Siskiyou Oak Network has been around at least since 2012. We had our first official work on the ground starting in 2014. And so you can those little colored dots are different projects that we've had over the years. The green is a layer of oak habitat. And then in that square box is the Table Rocks. So if you're ever in Southern Oregon, it's a very beautiful geological formation that we have here, and it's surrounded by beautiful oak habitat, and it's owned by the Nature Conservancy and BLM. So it's been a really great priority spot for us for doing oak restoration, various bird projects, as well as it's a great spot for community outreach and engagement. As well as being leaders, KBO also participates in monitoring for the Klamath Siskiyou Oak Network. And so for this, we use birds as indicators. So that's our role is making sure that ecosystems are healthy. And so birds, some of them are pretty picky, right? Like you can only find some birds in very specific habitat. And because of the large amount long-term data that we have collected, we're able to notice or tell what habitat is maybe skewing from being a healthy habitat, because the swoop of birds that should be there aren't there. And so what we do kind of as it's part of our long-term monitoring goals as well, is we go in and we do surveys, and those surveys tell us how healthy the habitat is. And then we get to use that information of what birds are there to also know what's missing from the landscape. Does it need more shrubs? Are we seeing drastic changes are there invasive species? And so the ground cover is changing. There's not enough native plants on the ground for seeds and other things like that. And so then we can relay that information to the restoration team that's on the ground. And so they kind of know what treatments that they need to prescribe on their landscape. And then we survey throughout that process. And then as well, a couple of years at the end to whether or not we've achieved our goal. So this really helps us assess habitat quality for conservation and restoration. And it guides a lot of research that shapes landscapes to support wildlife and the environment. And so even just by focusing on birds, we're focusing on the whole ecosystem. Our current initiative, too fast, for the Klamath Siskiyou Oak Network is called the Upper Rogue Oak Initiative. And all those logos are our current partners for this project. And so we're really focusing on a specific area here in Southern Oregon. And there's been the risk that we're taking care of in this spot is the exclusion of fire. So fire has been removed from the landscape for a very long time, and this has caused several issues, and as well as conifer encroachment. So that's the footprint of the Upper Rogue Oak Initiative. And the green there is U.S. Forest Service land, and then you can see the orange or yellowish is BLM, and then all the white land is private land. And so we were given about $13 million through various agencies, as well as matching funds from our partners to try and restore 3,650 acres in that footprint. And this is a split of private and public land. So you saw that kind of checkerboarding. And so the goal is to figure out what parts of the BLM land, the yellowish land, needs a lot of work, which was really skewed from what would be considered a healthy oak habitat, and then figure out what landowners are surrounding that and provide them with the tools to do restoration, which could either be money or us coming onto their land with approval to do the restoration ourselves. And this allows us to create more of a corridor of healthy habitat instead of having patchy pieces of healthy habitat, which doesn't supply a lot of food or good resources for birds when they're nesting and things like that if it's really patchy. And then again, our outcomes are hopefully to reduce the threats that these oaks are facing, which includes conifer encroachment. So conifer grow much faster than oak trees. And so if they aren't removed due to fire or human removal, they can outcrowd the oak trees and they can grow above them much faster, taking up a lot of resources like water and light. And then also when a fire does come through, because conifers aren't adapted to fire, they provide a lot of fuel for the fire, which will become a high intensity fire that will cause death to our oaks. So oaks are adapted to low severity fire and can handle it quite well. And then because of this, we're hoping that this increases climate resiliency within our region. So we've been seeing a lot of what's called Douglas fir die-off, which is creating a lot of fuel, kind of dangerous fuel across our landscape. And we've already, over the years, have encountered several severe wildfires. So we're hoping that by performing this sort of restoration to protect oak habitat, we're also able to protect people's livelihoods as well as their homes in the area. And then, of course, support biodiversity. So we're really hoping that this helps make a difference for our oak birds here in the region. And then another fun thing what I get to do is our outreach. So KVO is involved in several kind of outreach programs. We participate in several World Migratory Bird Days here in Southern Oregon. So we do tabling events, presentations, and talks like this. We take people up to banding stations, as well as attend several festivals. Another piece of our outreach is eBird Northwest. So how many of you use eBird? I can see you all. See a couple hands. Okay, that's good. So if you don't, I'm sure most of you have heard about eBird. And I've heard a lot of reasons why people don't use eBird, and listing isn't my favorite thing either. But it really helps feed conservation on the ground. So because we have so many birders, but we don't have a lot of bird biologists on the ground. So by having that many more eyes, we're able to use the data that you guys put into eBird to help us better understand bird ranges, whether or not they're being impacted by climate change, if they're having to shift. We can start to understand different migratory pathways and other things like that just by looking at eBird data. And it's been super helpful and super successful over the years. So I would recommend using it when you feel good about it. So that kind of wraps up my talk for today. Ways you can support KVO. We raise funds through Bottle Drop. Washington. We sell conservation science stamps with our duck stamps. You can subscribe to our call note. We also have a lot of Zoom presentations that we host. And you can join us on a KBO adventure. We do trips to Brazil, different parts of California, and we're also thinking of visiting Veracruz, Mexico to do the hawk watch. So thank you so much for listening me talk to you about KBO. I see some things in the chat, and I'm not sure how. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions here?
Are the Vesper sparrows we see here in Washington the Oregon Vespers?
So they're in the Puget Sound area. They've actually been, they were historically in the Puget Sound area in the 1960s, but due to population decreases, they're losing ground. I believe what you guys have over there on the east would be the Great Basin sparrow, or Vesper sparrow, which is, they're a subspecies of each other and they look very similar.
I believe there's a question in the chat. Are you working with any programs to do prescribed fires to both reduce fuel and to reduce encroachment by fir into oak territory?
Yeah, so one of our big partners that does a lot of that work down here is Lomakatsi. And so they get a lot of, they're a tribally led restoration team. And one of their main focuses is getting fire on the ground. And that's either through brush piling, so going through cutting down brush and putting it in a pile and burning it, as well as doing more cultural burning and getting fire on the landscape.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, Elva. My name is Connie. First, I just wanted to mention that my mother's name was Elva. Your name is unusual, so I thought I would mention that. But my question is, do you use any of these apps that allow you to hear the bird song and use, where it identifies, that there's a bird in the area and it identifies that? Do you use that as part of your count mechanism?
No, so we don't use that as a part of our research. I do use it as an outreach tool because it is such a great way to get started and get into birding. But unfortunately, Merlin isn't quite as accurate as our trained bird by ear people are. It's getting better by more people using it, but it's not quite there yet.
Thank you.
Hi, Elva. My name is Taylor. I had a question about your banding methods. You mentioned that you often do re-sightings of banded birds instead of recapturings. So do you always do multiple bands on the birds you catch so that you can look at those multiple bands, or is that with repeated recapturings they get multiple bands?
Yeah, so that's only for specific projects that we need to keep track of individuals so that we know who is who on the landscape without having to put them through the stress of getting caught up in the net and being put in hand again. So our regular bird banding program just uses the metal bands, and we do recaptures on those, but that's based on the bird flying into the net on their own. Whereas the colored bands, we were usually targeting the birds, and it's fun with the Oregon Vesper sparrows because the males are very territorial. And so you can play a male's call underneath the net and they get so mad and they want to fight. So they fly into the net and we get them.
Any more questions? Oh.
So Elva, I loved your the videos tracking the sparrows, the male sparrows and the female martin. Those were, I really love the postcards from the martin. That was great. But what I'm wondering, and this might be obvious to a lot of the better birders in the room than I, but am I correct in assuming that Oregon Vesper sparrows migrate in flocks? So those boys we were following weren't really by themselves. They were with a bunch of other sparrows. And same question for the martins.
Yeah, so as you can tell, like especially the Vesper sparrows, because we had multiples of them, they left it all at different times. And so they aren't necessarily with others. So a lot of times they will travel by themselves, especially older birds. Younger birds may stick together just for familiar, because they don't really aren't really sure what they're doing and it's all new to them. But our older birds probably migrate alone, and not necessarily in flocks.
Well, it looks like I'm not sure we have any more questions in the room. And it looks like maybe none in the chat, but thank you very much, Elva. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.